Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to take some time and talk about four big signings that happened this past week in the NHL. Before I dive into them, as always, please be sure to leave a like on this video, comment if you'd like to see more of these types of videos, these more news-based videos, and also be sure to subscribe for more videos as well. Let's dive right into the first one, the biggest news arguably out of the four. Jeremy Swayman signs a contract with the Boston Bruins at long last, 8 years, $8.25 million AAV. Now, I didn't have a doubt that Swayman was not going to sign with the Bruins. I felt very confident that he'd be signing with the Bruins, just a matter of when. It seemed like things might have taken a long time and could have extended potentially all the way to December, right up until that deadline. But thankfully, after a lot of debate, after a couple quotes that went out to the media, the Bruins and Swayman were finally able to reach an agreement. I think this deal is very fair for both sides. Swayman gets that long term and gets the AAV that he wanted, kind of resetting the goaltending market per se. We'll see what happens with a guy like Igor Shesterkin, who certainly is going to make more than Carey Price's 10.5 AAV. The past couple of years, he split the net with Linus Ullmark around 50-50, and this will be the first season that he's really relied on as the number one goalie for the Boston Bruins, playing I'd expect at least 50 games, probably 60 games too, after seeing what Korpisalo, how he played versus the Florida Panthers in game one. Now, there's still plenty of time for him to work on that. Last year, Swayman had great stats. He had a 2.53 goals allowed average and a 916 save percentage. But the clear thing that really stood out and the real reason that made the Bruins realize we need to make sure we keep this guy under contract was the fact that in the playoffs, the Bruins, the reason why they made it out the first round and made it a series with the Florida Panthers in round two was because of Jeremy Swayman. He kept them in all the games. He did a great job in net, made some fantastic saves, absolute robberies. 2.15 GAA and a 933 save percentage in the playoffs. Once again, there was no doubt that Jeremy Swayman was not going to have put the team on his back, and he certainly did that. So, 25 years old. I like this deal for both sides. I think it'll look like a steal in a couple years, probably 3-4 years into this deal. And we, with some other signings I'll discuss today, it's kind of clear that the goaltending market is going to keep increasing and increasing. And as the salary cap likely takes an exponential rise over the next couple of years, I think this is a great deal for both sides. Moving on from Jeremy Swayman, let's move into the three extensions that were signed this past week, starting off with Stanley Cup champion, now two-time Stanley Cup champion, Carter Verhaeghe signing a 8-year long extension with the Florida Panthers that will kick in next year, July 1st. This has an AAV of $7 million, and this man might be one of the most clutch players in the NHL. He has 10 game-winning goals in the playoffs, most notably, as people can remember, Game 7 versus the Boston Bruins in 2023, coming back all the way 3-1 down, and then scoring the game winner in overtime. If you need a big goal in the playoffs, you want Carter Verhaeghe on your team. If you're in overtime in the playoffs, you want Carter Verhaeghe on his team. Past 2 years, he's had 30-plus goals. The season before last year had 40 goals. This guy has become an integral piece for the Panthers after being cast off by the Lightning after their first Stanley Cup. Verhaeghe was an unrestricted free agent, as in the Lightning decided not to tender him a qualifying offer. And at 25 years old, he decided to sign with the other Florida team, the Florida Panthers, and really has blossomed and flourished into a top six player, top six winger for this Florida Panthers team, once again becoming an integral part in last year's Stanley Cup and their Stanley Cup finalist appearance in 2023, where they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights. I really like this deal. Yes, it goes all the way till he's 37, so this is a contract that is not going to look good by year 6, 7, 8, but it should also be noted too that this contract shifts from a no movement clause to a no trade clause for those last couple of years, so that makes it a little more easier for the Panthers to potentially move on from the contract or potentially even buy him out if need be. But I really like this deal for the Panthers and Verhaeghe. Back-to-back years of 70 points. That's going to get you around $7 million. My big concern is just age. But again, if you want to keep your solid core pieces together, this is the kind of contract that you're going to have to give out. So I think this works out for both teams, and I am perfectly fine with this deal. And I'd also say, too, I would also expect and wouldn't be surprised if Sam Bennett, who's also going to be a UFA this upcoming offseason, to get a similar deal, maybe even $7 million, maybe closer to the $6 million range, but I wouldn't be shocked if they look to keep him around more of a physical presence than for Carter Verhaeghe, and also a really tough player and another solid top six piece for the Florida Panthers. So we'll see what happens with Sam Bennett. I wouldn't be shocked if an extension gets done in the next week or two, and I'm making another video talking about that extension. The next deal I want to talk about is Joey Daccord signing a 5x5 extension that will kick in on July 1st with the Seattle Kraken. Joey Daccord was taken from the Ottawa Senators by the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft 3 years ago. Daccord was kind of a cast-off, not really thought of too much by the Senators, kind of had some potential, but was likely looking at more of a fringe goaltender potentially. Really came onto the scene not this past year, but the year before with the Coachella Firebirds, having a really good deep postseason run with them. And now in his first year in the NHL last year, he really played lights out in the Winter Classic versus Vegas and used that momentum to put together a really solid year throughout the year. And although he hasn't played more than 60 games, he's being rewarded for such a great year last year. And the Senators are banking on his youthfulness at around 28, 29 years old, along with his really solid play last year of 50 games, and hoping that he can continue this play over the next couple of years. Now, Daccord, again, just to dive really briefly into the stats, 916 save percentage, 2.46 goal to lot average, kept the Seattle Kraken in a lot of games that they likely weren't going to win. Their defense was a little shaky last year, and they don't quite have the complete offensive core where they have a bunch of outstanding players that are going to put in a ton of goals on net and really light up the lamp. So for a team that lacks offense and is still kind of building up into a perennial contender, locking up a true guy who the Seattle Kraken believe is their number one goalie or can play to a number one goalie in Joey Daccord, I think is a good deal for both sides. Daccord, for having a solid year last year, get some term, get some money as well. And for the Seattle Kraken, who have already dealt with Philip Grubauer, who was a complete failed experiment and is likely going to get bought out at the end of the year, along with Chris Driedger, who they signed a contract recently right after the expansion draft. He hasn't played up to his contract, recently bought out. The Seattle Kraken need a number one goalie, and I don't think Joey Daccord is a goalie that you would want to play 50-plus games every year, but he's a goalie that I think would fit really well in a tandem. So if Seattle, this upcoming offseason or maybe by trade, can find another goalie that can split those starts with Joey Daccord, I think that's going to do great things for both Joey Daccord and for the Seattle Kraken as well, who are looking to get back into the playoff hunt as they were, not last year, but the year before. The last extension that I want to discuss that was recently signed is Linus Ullmark signing an extension with the Ottawa Senators. Linus Ullmark signing for the next 4 years after this year ends at $8.25 million per year. Now, he was recently acquired by trade by the Senators this past offseason from the Boston Bruins. And Ullmark was a really solid tandem goalie, most notably winning the Vezina Trophy in 2023, playing over 50 games. And although he hasn't really consistently been playing more than 40, 45 games per year, he's been playing at a top 10 goalie type of level. And those types of goalies tend to play pretty well into their mid-30s. And I think this deal is a perfect deal for both sides, as in Linus Ullmark gets paid. He gets $8.25 million, similar and the exact same amount of money as his counterpart over the past couple of years, Jeremy Swayman. And he also gets 4 years as well, which is great for the Ottawa Senators term-wise, because you don't really want to give a goalie who is on the wrong side of 30 an 8-year contract all the way till he's 38, 39 years old. So I really like this deal for both sides. The Ottawa Senators have really been starving for a solid goaltender ever since the Hamburglar left them way back in 2017, 2018. Everyone remembers Craig Anderson and obviously Andrew Hammond, those two elite goalies. And since then, the Ottawa Senators have really been lacking and looking for that true number one goalie. Last year, they got off to a really bad start, and that was not made any better with Korpisalo, who had a really rough year, was given a contract of 5 years length at over $4 million the previous offseason, and had a terrible year last year, was part of the trade going back to the Boston Bruins in that Ullmark trade. And the Senators are now done with all that stuff. They can put the Matt Murray contract as well behind them. And now they have a true number one goalie. Yes, Ottawa's goal defensive core is a little bit of a step down in comparison to the Boston Bruins, but you still have really solid pieces in Jake Sanderson, Thomas Chabot, Artem Zub. So they have a solid D-core where it's not too big of a step down from the Boston Bruins, where I'd be especially concerned of any massive regression. I will say the same risk from Swayman's contract is apparent with Ullmark's deal, where, as I mentioned previously, they haven't really been the number one goalie, where they've been expected to play 50, 60 games. But I don't have any issue with either of these deals. I think both goaltenders are for sure top 10 goalies and are more than capable of playing 50, 60 games, although that's probably not recommended. You'd like to have a solid backup as well. But yeah, we'll see what happens going forward. Igor Shesterkin is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, so we'll see if the goaltending salaries continue to rise, and he would be the big deal as he's expected to make over $10.5 million, which is Carey Price's current AAV. So we'll see what happens with the goaltending market going forward. You can bet that I will be here to discuss it as well, so be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel as well for more sports content. Let me know what you guys think about these extensions and deals. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. Are any of them overpaid, underpaid, too long term, too short term? I'm fine with all these deals, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well. So I'll see you guys on the next video, and let me know what you guys think about this content. See ya.